quality of soil coverage and health of the cover crop seed is key to achieving the goals set out for planting the cover crop. Growers should put as much work into planting the cover crop as they do with cash crops. Stand quality is determined by seed quality, seeding date, seeding rate, and weather. The second management practice that will be key to achieving the set goals is effectively terminating the cover crop so that it doesn't compete with the subsequent cash crop. There are several different ways to terminate the cover crop. The correct method will depend on the planned use of the cover crop biomass. Setting the seeds up for successful germination and establishment is key as with any crop. Soil moisture can be hard to time in wet or dry years, but adequate soil moisture early can go a long way to establishing crops that will later be drought tolerant. Be aware of soil temperature limitations for winter covers. Recommended soil temperatures for major cover crops are listed here. Cereal rye is the best option if planting late in the fall. It has the highest chance of a successful establishment due to low minimum temperatures at which it will germinate. Make sure to use an inoculant for legumes. Uncomposted manure poses a food safety risk if applied too close to the time of vegetable cash crop harvest. But manure application prior to planting a cover crop can reduce food safety and possible salt injury risks, and the applied nutrients may be returned to the soil and next crop via the cover crop biomass. If large amounts of cover crop biomass are critical and the soil has poor fertility, fertilizer may be required. Regulations under the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, will restrict how soon before harvest manure can be applied. Current recommendations indicate 90 to 120 days before harvest, depending on if the edible portion of the crop is in contact with the soil. There are two primary means to seed cover crops. Each has advantages and disadvantages. Broadcasting is easier for small-scale growers who do not have access to seed drills. This requires higher seeding rates due to expected lower germination rates. Broadcasting can be done by hand on small areas and get reasonable stands. This has the tendency to create random patterns of plant establishment. Large seeded types may need to be incorporated deeper into the soil. Drilling creates a more even and consistent stand but requires more equipment and calibration. Species mixes may be more complicated to seed. Be aware of differences in depth requirements. Species that are slow to achieve canopy closure may allow weeds to grow between rows. Note that sun hemp and sunflower must be pushed down for good establishment and more successful with drilling versus broadcasting. Large seeded legumes are better with depth but may germinate at shallower depths. Here are just two of the many options for planting a cover crop, with the low-tech option on the left and seed drill with many seed boxes for various cover crop mixes on the right. Seeding rate calibration takes time, but it is a good investment. No matter your seeding method, know your area and set the seeder to the seed size. Calibrating seed drills for the speed, depth placement, and number of seeds per row foot will be critical to minimizing the cost of using cover crops. Seed depth and soil contact are key. Notice in the picture on the right how the germination is highest where the seed was stepped on and pressed into the soil. See the second resource listed at the end of this presentation for a calibration guide. Planting date is key to establishing winter cover crops due to the shortening days and cooling temperatures of fall. Brassicas and legumes tend to do better planted earlier in the fall. Consult local recommendations for the correct planting dates. Grasses must undergo vernalization, which is a cold period that will initiate the plant to become reproductive and elongate. This usually is achieved by fall planting, but usually does not occur for spring plantings. If grasses are planted in the spring, they will provide soil cover and protection from erosion, but are unlikely to provide sufficient biomass for weed control in the next summer cash crop. Summer cover crops should not be planted before air and soil temperatures are conducive to their growth. Otherwise, they should be timed to reproduce the desired amount of biomass before they must be terminated prior to the next cash crop. Soil moisture and high heat may limit the success of cover crop establishment in midsummer for certain crops. Cover crop termination methods vary based on the level of soil disturbance that is desired and if a clean soil surface is desired or if the biomass will be used to provide soil cover and suppress weeds. There are three primary methods used in vegetable systems: no-till, strip-till, and completely tilling the ground. Tilling and soil incorporation should be done with enough time to allow the material to break down before laying plastic or transplanting in the next crop. 2 to 4 weeks is ideal depending on the soil temperature and moisture. Warmer soils with good moisture will rapidly break down incorporated biomass due to active soil microbial populations. Cold and dry soils will be much slower. On the left is an example of a roller crimper. A roller mechanically lodges the crop and the crimper cuts or pinches the stem. If no roller is available, a rototiller with the tines not engaged may be used to roll and crimp the cover crop. In no-till systems, a roller or roller crimper can be used to leave a smooth cover crop biomass weed mat on the soil surface. Termination via roller crimper is sometimes accompanied with the simultaneous use of an herbicide to ensure a good kill of the cover crop. Cover crop species vary in the ease with which they are terminated via roller crimper. Timing of using the roller crimper at crop maturity is key. Combination of herbicide, even at a reduced herbicide rate, in conjunction with the roller crimper can increase the percent kill. Non-elongated grasses will not be killed, and clovers can be hard to kill via the roller crimper method. If equipment is a limitation, choose cover crops used for forage as they will be mowing tolerant. Mowing cover crops helps to keep them small. If mowing at termination, these small pieces will break down faster and have better soil contact, and if burying the material, soil microbes will do the work. If material is very wet, it may be preferred to let it dry down just a bit so it doesn't get tied up in machinery. Cover crops integrated into plasticulture systems are used for their impacts on soil organic matter and pest control, but not necessarily for weed control. The plastic is used for weed control and soil temperature modification. The cover crop must instead be tilled into the soil prior to plastic being laid. A major consideration for using cover crops in plasticulture systems is timing to ensure the cover crop material breaks down before plastic is laid. Unbroken down cover crop biomass can tear plastic or get hung up in the bedding equipment. If large amounts of cover crop material remain under the plastic, the bed shape may sink or lose shape as the biomass breaks down. In the summer, 2 weeks between cover crop incorporation into the soil and laying plastic is generally sufficient. In the early spring, 4 weeks may be required. Warm and moist soil foster soil biological activity that does the work of breaking down the organic matter. There are many factors that go into ensuring good termination via roller crimper in no-till systems. Roller crimpers are most effective on grasses and legumes after they have reached their reproductive stage. At pollen shed or later is ideal for many grasses. Nitrogen content is highest in legumes around flowering but prior to seed set. Termination should occur before cover crops set seed. If not, they may become weeds later, and nitrogen may be tied up in the seed. Grasses become lignified at and after pollen shed, and they will break down more slowly. If pollinator habitat is desired, the cover crop should be allowed to flower. Effectiveness of herbicide termination is dependent on the herbicide used, the herbicide rate, the coverage, growth stage of the cover crop, and air temperature and weather. Sometimes the best laid plans don't pan out. Here are some ways that planned use of cover crops can result in failure. It is best to always have a backup plan if things don't go as planned. Use of herbicide or tillage may be required. Generally, organic systems can be most difficult to recover from failures in cover crop weed suppression due to the lack of approved organic herbicides. The take-home message for this module is choose your seeding rate and methods carefully based on the equipment available. Spend time calibrating seeding equipment. Plan for the termination method and timing prior to planting the cover crop, and always have a plan B if things don't go as planned. These trainings were developed by Drs. Amanda McWhirt and Jackie Lee with support from a Southern SARE Professional Development Program grant.